Hello, readers of the Community Post. I'm Seth, the sports editor for the Community Post, and we're bringing you week 3 of the Prep Football Quick Hitters. We're going to be looking at the prior matchups for our 4 local area teams: Minster, Fort Loramie, Marion, local New Bremen, and kind of looking ahead to their matchups this week. So we'll hop right into it. First up is Minster. They fell to 0-2 this week. Last week they lost to Coldwater, 49-14. We have to remember this is a team that just returns 5 just total starters on both sides of the ball. So, I mean, it's a young team. They're still kind of finding their footing. First off, we'll look at the positives. The offense got better in every statistical category. They were able to put up a couple touchdowns. The snap center exchange, which was a big problem in week 1, was markedly better according to head coach Garen Stokes. Talked to him on the phone earlier this week. And offensively wise, they were led by Johnny Nixon, who went 13 of 25 for 124 yards, touchdown and an interception. Connor Albers ran for 69 yards and a touchdown. And then receiving wise, Adam Kettner had 5 catches for 56 yards, and Devin Webker had 3 catches for 45 yards and a touchdown. And while the offense didn't necessarily have a lot of result plays, necessarily, head coach Garen Stokes said the execution was better. So the offense is kind of making steps and improvements. Defensively wise, they're still growing. They give up 500 yards and 42 first half points to Coldwater. No way to kind of sugarcoat that there. It has to be better. Talking to head coach Stokes, he said that the alignment needs to be better. They had some issues with that in week 1, and he mentioned that again when I talked to him this week. They need to read keys, and the other thing was kind of just getting the ball carrier. From Stokes, quote, "Our effort, we have to scrap, claw, fight, and find a way to get to the ball and drop the ball carrier. We're just doing a lot of fundamental stuff poorly. That's coaching, and that's on me," end quote. And then kind of looking ahead to St. Henry this week, it's kind of a mixed bag. They're a team that's 1-1, and you've kind of seen a team that so week 1 they lost to Coldwater, and they beat Anna this most recent week. They were shut out against Coldwater, but they put up 44 against Anna. And it's kind of different because you know Anna is replacing a wealth of experience. I know they were a state title winner last year, but they lost a lot of players. So just talking to Stokes about what they were preparing for, he said it's another physical downhill team that's going to be looking to kind of run right at them. So again, it's for him. It's figuring out their defensive side of the ball and what they need to do to improve and get to that level. Next up, we're going to be taking a look at Fort Loramie. All right, looking at Fort Loramie now. They moved to 2-0 with a win over Bethel, 61-7 last Friday, and now they're taking on Miami East this week. For their offense, it's really just kind of been about who we kind of mentioned in our previews leading up to the season. Sophomore wide receiver Logan Eilerman added 2 more touchdowns against Bethel. Senior running back Nate Meyer has averaged over 100 yards in their first 2 games, and Colin Moore has passed for 5 touchdowns and over 300 yards total in these first 2 weeks. And head coach Spencer Wells talked to him earlier this week. He said Colin was about getting more efficient. He was much more efficient in this Bethel game than they were comparatively last week, and it's just about continuing to improve and take those small steps. Defensively, they've only given up 7 points, so it's hard to find a ton to nitpick about. But one of the things that Wells talked to me about was their third down efficiency. He says he wants to see them get off the field a little bit better than they have. They've given up a few third down and long conversions that he says they need to clean up as they move through the season. Last week, one of the things that Wells mentioned was position technique, and he said that he and the coaching staff across the board have seen that going back and looking at film, they're seeing, we're seeing the things that we harped on show up in game film now. So once again, it's about continuing to build on those. And he says that he's liked the progress he's seen position technique wise. Kind of looking ahead to Miami East, a team they beat big again last year, and they've like most teams in the cross county conference last year when they on their way to the conference title. They had a lot of success against these wing T type teams. They're 1-1. Miami East is that year, and it's another team with some big guys up front. So Wells said that the big thing for them is going to be discipline. It's going to be a team that's going to be trying to run. They got to make sure they're disciplined and not give up that pass play that they're going to try to work towards and lull that Fort Loramie defense to sleep with. Another thing with kind of the big linemen on both sides of the ball, they need to make sure they're pad level and be very disciplined there to make sure they're getting low. And defensively, for Miami East, he said they faced another full forward defense, something similar they've seen this year as well, so they're prepared for that. But one of the things he wants their offense to do better is their screen game. He says that's kind of a really good mix-in for what they like to do. They wanted to get more vertical this year, and they have with Logan Eilerman. Nate Meyer provides another steady presence on the ground, but he said like throwing screen every once in a while in there is a good mix-up. And he said that's throughout these first couple weeks, it's just been a little bit off. So that's something that he wants to work on this week offensively for his team. And next, we're going to be taking a look at Marion Local. All right, next up, we're looking at Marion Local, who moved to 2-0 with a 21-13 win against over New Bremen this past Friday, and then this week they're taking on Versailles. Versailles is another 2-0 team, but kind of looking back at New Bremen first. After the game on Friday, when I talked to Coach Goodwin, we talked about just what needs to happen to kind of get your teams with a better start. In weeks 1 and 2, they both really had sloppy first halves, and luckily their defense was able to kind of keep them in it and let their offense kind of work things out. And I talked to Coach Goodwin about it, and he said, there's really no magic formula. It just needs to be execution. We have to execute better at the start of the games, and that comes down to a good week of practice. And when I talked to him on the phone this week, he said it's been a good week of practice thus far. And now it's going to be about kind of translating that over to the game field. Defensively, kind of like I kind of just mentioned, it's a unit that's kind of kept them in it. It's a unit that combines some good experience with veterans returning, and then a lot of good talent, but with some young, inexperienced guys. With that blend that they have is a really has been a formula for success early on this year. According to Coach Goodwin, quote, "It helps a lot. We've got guys like Peyton, Adi, and Charlie Hulsman in the secondary. They can clamp down. We went against 2 good wide receivers this season already, and you wouldn't have really known it watching the game. That allows us to do a lot of good things on defense, having good defensive backs," end quote. And offensively, to kind of trying to find that consistency, Goodwin says one of the things that they need to do to have better starts is kind of just establish that run game early. You kind of see it. You've seen it happen last week against New Bremen. They were able to kind of wear them down. An 80-yard fourth quarter drive kind of put the game out of reach. Rotating a stable of running backs, the 2 main ones being Grant Meyer and Drew Seitz. But it's really just about kind of getting that going earlier, so they don't have to work so hard in the second half to kind of fight back from some of these games or from some of these close contests. As far as improvements to be made, Goodwin, kind of looking back on that game, I asked him, you had the 5 turnovers, but you come away with the win. That you got to be happy with that. And then again, a strong second half to come away with the win. And then Goodwin said, quote, "I saw some things in the second half that looked like Marion local football. We have another good team this week. It'll be apparent or not whether we build on that," end quote. And kind of looking ahead again at Versailles this week, they put up 34 points and 27 points in week 1 and 2. And Coach Goodwin said it seems like they're always falling forward. And a game like this, it's a team that kind of mirrors Marion local as far as being big, physical, and they got a QB who can kind of do both, put his head down, and but they have a stable of running backs as well, something that again mirrors Marion local. So he said this game's going to kind of come down to who's going to be falling on top. He said that team kind of is always falling forward. So for them, it's going to be about who's going to be on the top of the pile at the end. He said, the game might come down to a few different plays on who's on top of the pile that can be the difference between a first down and a punt. Defensively, Versailles has only given up 14 total points, and they haven't really been exposed yet, according to Coach Goodwin. And he says they're going to be kind of probing to find those weaknesses and see hopefully that they can find some exploitations and really expose that defense. But for them, it's really about kind of like we mentioned before, establishing that run game so it can kind of open up the rest of what they like to do. Again, you have guys like Adi and Hulsman who play both ways and both 2 very talented receivers. You saw that last week against New Bremen with kind of the big play catches they had. Adi had 2 touchdowns, but Charlie as well had a lot of deep catches to kind of set those up. So yeah, that does it for Marion local. And lastly, we'll be looking ahead to New Bremen. All right, our last matchup this week that we're going to be talking about is New Bremen. They traveled to Delphos. First, we kind of look back against their match against Marion local. They fell to 1-1. They lost 21-13. Talking to head coach Chris Smith this week after the game, he said, he was disappointed because not because they lost the game, but because he felt they were right there and felt they had a chance to win it. They forced 5 turnovers. They held them scoreless in the first half, and were up actually at half, leading 6-0. They just couldn't capitalize on some of the opportunities. And the prior week, when I talked to Chris Smith about looking at the game in the preview and what needed to be done to come away with that win, he said we have to score on any opportunities we can, whether that's touchdowns or field goals. We have to put points on the board. So get kind of positive looking back. Again, that defensive performance, they gave up 0 points in the first half, including 4 stops from the 4-yard line to end the half, 2 consecutive running plays on 3rd and 4th down that they were able to kind of hold fast. Offensively, Mitchell Hayes found Trevor Bergman for the 1 score in the first half on a 4th and 2 conversion, a 27-yard touchdown. But the other big problem there, kind of moving on, Schmidt said he expected a tough go of it with their run game. He knows Marion local has a stout defense, but they were held to just 27 yards on the ground, and that's just not going to cut it for what they want to do. They have that big 3-headed running attack with Hayes, Bertkey, and Dickey, but it just needs to be better to allow them to open up the rest of their offense, which starts with establishing that run game. Looking ahead, Delphos is 1-1. They have a week 1 win over Parkway, and then they lost to Versailles this week. Head coach Chris Smith said they're more of a true spread team. They see I mean, they do see some spread like with Minster, and then like comparatively, the examples he gave me were like with Minster and ourselves when we practice against each other, we have more tight ends in our formation. We do, because they do run a little bit of spread variation. But for Delphos, they go more 2x2 or 3x1 without a tight end. So it's something that different than what New Bremen is used to seeing. So he said they're going to need to be pressuring that QB a little bit more with them kind of spreading the field more. And with that being said, he knows that they have to be disciplined in their rush lanes because if they get too far upfield, that quarterback can just step up and run. So they need to be disciplined in the rush lanes. And he knows, kind of looking back last week against Marion Local, that the secondary did give up some big chunk plays, especially in that third quarter, just some big chunk plays through the air. So he knows that the secondary is going to need to step up and perform better than what they did last week. And as far as kind of for them to get back on track, Delphos has some size up front. So again, it's going to be about establishing that run game. And he said it doesn't even need to, they didn't just need to run more effectively than they did against Marion Local and kind of get back to what they were doing week 1 against Minster to have really flesh out their game plan offensively. That'll do it for week 3 of Prep Football Quick Hitters, and be sure to keep an eye for it next week. As always, be sure to look at our website, minstercommunitypost.com, or follow us on Twitter at CPS Sports 1896 for video content and just scores from other local teams.